He kissed me as a cruel bet and it went viral. Years later, he begged me for forgiveness at my college. I spent 2 years watching Marcus Chen from across classrooms, lunch tables, and crowded hallways before I ever said more than 3 words to him. We moved in overlapping circles throughout sophomore and junior year, same honors classes, same college prep track, same weekend parties where I'd nurse one drink all night while working up the courage to talk to him. He had this easy confidence that made everyone lean in when he spoke, like whatever he was about to say would be the most interesting thing you'd heard all day. I convinced myself he noticed me too. The way he'd smile when we made eye contact in AP history. How he always seemed to pick the lab station next to mine in chemistry. The time he asked to borrow my notes and spent 10 minutes talking to me about the upcoming calculus exam, standing so close I could smell his cologne. I built an entire relationship in my head based on fragments and possibilities. My best friend Maya told me I should just ask him out, that it was obvious he liked me too from the way he looked at me. But I was terrified of ruining whatever we had, even if what we had was mostly imaginary. So I waited and hoped and analyzed every interaction for hidden meaning. Senior year started with everyone talking about college applications and last chances to do the things we'd always meant to do. Maya cornered me in the bathroom at Tyler's back-to-school party in September and told me this was it. If I didn't tell Marcus how I felt before graduation, I'd regret it forever. She was probably right. I was 17 and running out of time to be brave. The party was packed with people from our grade, music so loud you had to shout to be heard, the kind of chaotic energy that comes from everyone knowing these moments are numbered. I found Marcus on the back deck with a group of his friends, laughing about something I'd missed. I waited until there was a natural break in conversation, until some of them drifted away to get more drinks, until it was just him and 2 other guys I barely knew. My hands were shaking when I asked if I could talk to him privately. He said sure with that easy smile and followed me down the deck steps into the backyard, away from the noise. The pool lights cast everything in blue and we stopped near the fence where it was quieter. I'd rehearsed what I wanted to say 100 times, but standing there with him actually looking at me, waiting, all my careful words evaporated. I just blurted it out, that I'd liked him for a long time, that I thought maybe he felt the same way, that I wanted to know if he'd want to go out sometime. Actually go out, not just run into each other at parties and pretend it was coincidence. He got this look on his face, surprise and something else I couldn't read. Then he smiled wider and said he'd been hoping I'd say something. Said he'd like me too but didn't want to assume and make things weird if he was wrong. Said he'd been thinking about asking me to homecoming but kept chickening out. I felt like I might actually float away. This was happening. This was real. 2 years of wanting him and he wanted me back. He asked if he could kiss me and I said yes, obviously, yes. His hands were warm when they touched my face and for about 15 perfect seconds I got everything I'd wanted. Then I heard the laughter. High and sharp and cruel, cutting through the warm night air. I opened my eyes and saw them, 5 of his friends standing on the deck above us, phones out, recording. One of them was doubled over laughing. Another was yelling something I couldn't make out over the ringing in my ears. Marcus pulled away from me and the expression on his face wasn't embarrassment or anger at being interrupted. It was triumph. He looked up at his friends and yelled, "Told you I could do it." The words didn't make sense at first. I stood there trying to understand what was happening while my brain struggled to catch up with reality. Marcus turned back to me and his smile was different now, sharp-edged and mean. He said, "Sorry, but Jordan bet me $50 I couldn't get you to confess and let me kiss you on camera. Easiest money I ever made." The deck erupted in cheers and more laughter. Someone yelled that he should get her to say she loved him too, that would be even better. Marcus looked at me like he was considering it, like he was calculating whether he could push this further. I don't remember leaving. I don't remember getting to my car or driving home. I just remember sitting in my bedroom with the door locked, replaying every interaction we'd ever had and realizing none of it meant what I thought it meant. All those smiles and conversations and borrowed notes, he was just setting me up. Making sure I'd fall hard enough that the rejection would be spectacular. The video showed up online before I woke up the next morning. Someone had edited it with heart emojis and sad music, my voice saying I liked him, his voice saying he liked me too, then the reveal and the laughter. By noon it had 200 shares. By the end of the weekend, everyone in our school had seen it. Maya came over that Saturday and held me while I cried. She wanted to do something, tell someone, make them take the video down, get Marcus in trouble. But what could anyone do? He hadn't technically done anything wrong except be cruel. There was no rule against making someone fall for you as a joke. I didn't go to school Monday. Or Tuesday. My mom thought I had the flu and I let her believe it. Wednesday I forced myself to go back because hiding forever wasn't an option, but walking through those hallways knowing everyone had seen me humiliated was the hardest thing I'd ever done. People whispered. Some were sympathetic and told me Marcus was trash. Others thought it was hilarious and would replay the video when they saw me coming. Marcus himself acted like nothing had happened, still charming and popular, still the guy everyone wanted to be around. I became the girl who got tricked, the punchline to a joke everyone else was in on. I made it through senior year by going numb. Stopped going to parties. Stopped talking to most people except Maya. Focused entirely on getting into a good college far away where no one would know this story. I got into Northwestern, 8 hours from home, and counted down the days until I could leave. The summer after graduation was quiet. I worked at a bookstore, saved money, avoided anywhere I might run into people from school. Maya and I hung out constantly. She was going to the University of Michigan, also far enough away for a fresh start. We promised to visit each other and made plans for a future where high school would just be an unpleasant memory we rarely discussed. I moved into my dorm at Northwestern in late August with a plan. Become someone completely different. I spent the first semester figuring out who that person should be. Joined clubs, made study groups, went to campus events, said yes to invitations even when anxiety told me to hide. I cut my hair short and started dressing in clothes that made me feel confident instead of invisible. I worked out and learned to make eye contact when I talked to people. By sophomore year, I had friends who knew nothing about what happened to me in high school. I dated casually, nothing serious, but enough to prove to myself I could be wanted for real. I got good grades and found a major I actually cared about, psychology, maybe because I was trying to understand what made people cruel. I built a life I was proud of. Junior year started with me finally feeling solid in who I'd become. I had my roommate Priya who I'd lived with since sophomore year, a close group of friends, and a work-study job at the library that I actually enjoyed. I'd stop thinking about Marcus except occasionally when something would remind me and I'd feel that old familiar shame creep in before I pushed it away. Then I walked into my social psychology seminar the first week of fall semester and saw him sitting 3 rows from the front. He looked different, taller maybe, or just carried himself differently. Still handsome in that effortless way that had made 17-year-old me stupid. He glanced up when I walked in and I saw recognition flicker across his face, then surprise, then something that looked almost like nervousness. I took a seat on the opposite side of the room and spent the entire class period staring at my notebook while my heart pounded. Of all the schools in the country, he'd ended up at mine. Northwestern had 30,000 students. What were the odds? After class, I packed up quickly and tried to leave before he could approach me, but he caught up with me in the hallway. Called my name and asked if we could talk. I turned around and looked at him directly for the first time in 3 years. He said he couldn't believe I went there too. What a small world, how crazy was this? Like we were old friends reconnecting. Like that video didn't exist. Like he hadn't turned the worst moment of my life into entertainment. I kept my voice steady and told him I had to get to my next class. Walked away while he was still talking, left him standing in the hallway looking confused. I called Maya that night and told her what happened. She was furious on my behalf, already planning ways to avoid him or get him kicked out of the class. But I told her I wasn't going to let him chase me out of a class one needed for my major. I'd worked too hard building this life to let him disrupt it. The next week in seminar, Marcus tried to sit closer to me. I moved. He tried to catch my eye during the discussion. I looked away. After class he asked if I wanted to grab coffee and catch up. I told him no thank you and left. This pattern continued for weeks. Him trying to talk to me, acting friendly and casual. Me being politely distant, never rude enough that he could call me out for it, but never warm enough to encourage him. I could see his frustration growing, the way his smile would tighten when I brushed him off. I found out through mutual connections that Marcus had transferred from Boston University after his grades tanked sophomore year. Northwestern was his second chance, his chance to prove he could handle a good school. He was on academic probation and needed to maintain a high GPA to stay. October brought midterms and group project assignments. Of course, the universe put Marcus and me in the same group for our major research presentation. Along with 2 other students, Kenji and Amanda, we were supposed to design and present a study on social conformity. Our first group meeting was awkward. Marcus kept trying to make small talk with me while Kenji and Amanda exchanged glances. I kept everything strictly professional, discussing only the project, offering no personal information. We divided up the work and I made sure my parts didn't require much coordination with Marcus. At our second meeting, Marcus asked if he could talk to me alone after we finished. Kenji and Amanda left and it was just us in the study room. He closed the door and turned to me with an expression I'd never seen on his face in high school, uncomfortable, almost vulnerable. He said he knew things ended badly between us in high school and he wanted to clear the air. I waited, watching him try to find the right words. He explained that he was young and stupid and his friends pressured him into that bet. Said everyone did dumb things in high school. Said he felt bad about how it went down and hoped we could move past it now that we were both more mature. I noticed he never said the words, "I'm sorry." Never took actual responsibility, just blamed being young and peer pressure. Framed it like something that happened to both of us rather than something he did to me. I told him I appreciated him bringing it up. Said I'd moved past it completely and wasn't angry anymore. Said I hoped we could work together professionally on this project. Relief flooded his face. He stepped forward like he might hug me and I took a smooth step back, already gathering my things. Told him I'd have my portion of the research done by our next meeting and left him standing there. Over the next few weeks, I noticed Marcus showing up at places I frequented. The library during my usual study hours. The campus coffee shop where I went every Tuesday and Thursday morning. The gym when I had my regular workout time. Always with an excuse. He was meeting someone, he had studying to do, he'd just discovered this great coffee. Priya noticed immediately. She'd heard the full story of what happened in high school and she was protective of me in a way that made me feel safe. She started coming with me to the coffee shop, sitting next to me at the library, making it clear I wasn't alone or available for his casual ambushes. Marcus started texting me, first about the project, asking questions he could have easily answered himself. Then more personal, did I want to study together for the midterm, had I been to that new restaurant on campus, was I going to the Halloween party this weekend? I responded minimally and hours later. Always polite, always brief, never encouraging. I could feel him getting more persistent, the texts coming more frequently, the questions more pointed. I met someone else that November. His name was David and he was a year ahead of me, studying engineering. We met at a friend's party and he asked me out without games or pretense. Just straightforward honesty. He thought I was interesting and wanted to take me to dinner. Dating David felt completely different from anything I'd experienced. He was kind and straightforward, showed up when he said he would, and communicated clearly about what he wanted. Being with him was easy in a way I hadn't known relationships could be. Marcus noticed. I saw his expression change the first time he spotted David and me together at the student center, David's arm around my shoulders while we waited in line for food. Something flickered across Marcus's face, surprise, then calculation, then something that looked like jealousy. The number of texts increased after that. Marcus asked directly if David and I were dating, if it was serious, how long we'd been together. I kept my answers vague and changed the subject back to schoolwork. Our group project presentation went well. We got an A and I thought maybe that would be the end of my mandatory interaction with Marcus. But he kept showing up, kept texting, kept trying to insert himself into my life. Priya asked me one night what I was planning to do about him. I realized I didn't need to do anything except keep living my life. His inability to accept my disinterest wasn't my problem to solve. December brought finals and winter break. I went home for 3 weeks and it felt strange being back in my hometown, running into people I'd gone to high school with. A few of them asked if I'd heard Marcus transferred to Northwestern. I said yes, we had a class together, small world. They looked at me expectantly, like they wanted more details or drama. I just smiled and changed the subject. I wasn't the girl who got humiliated at that party anymore. I was someone who had built a whole life elsewhere, and Marcus was just background noise in it. Spring semester started in January and I didn't have any classes with Marcus, which was a relief. But he still found ways to run into me. I started going to meetings for clubs I was in, showed up at the library during my study sessions, always with that casual friendliness that pretended our history didn't exist. David and I were getting more serious. We'd said we loved each other over winter break and were talking about getting an apartment together for senior year. He knew the basics of what had happened with Marcus, that someone had humiliated me in high school and happened to end up at Northwestern. He'd asked if it bothered me seeing Marcus around and I told him honestly that it didn't, that I'd moved on completely. Valentine's Day, David planned this elaborate surprise. Rose petals in my dorm room, dinner at a nice restaurant off campus, a playlist he'd made of songs that reminded him of me. It was thoughtful and romantic and real, the kind of thing I used to dream about when I was 17 and stupid. We ran into Marcus at the restaurant. He was there with a girl I recognized from one of my classes, but his attention wasn't on her. He was watching David and me, watching how David held my chair and made me laugh, and I saw something on Marcus's face I'd never seen before, regret. After that night, Marcus changed his approach. No more casual friendliness, no more pretending we were just old acquaintances. He sent me a long text message saying he needed to talk to me, that there were things he should have said a long time ago. I didn't respond. He tried again, said he knew I was with David but he needed me to hear him out, just once, just to give him a chance to explain. I told him there was nothing to explain and I wasn't interested in rehashing the past. He showed up at my dorm. Priya answered the door and told him I wasn't home, even though I was sitting right there on my bed with the door cracked open, listening. He asked Priya to tell me he was sorry, really sorry, not just for the bet but for not understanding how much it hurt me. Priya closed the door in his face and came back to our room. She asked if I wanted her to report him for harassment. I told her not yet, that I wanted to handle this my way. I finally agreed to meet Marcus for coffee. Not because I owed him anything, but because I wanted to see what he'd actually say when he couldn't hide behind texts or surprise visits. We met at a neutral location off campus, a busy coffee shop where there were plenty of people around. He looked nervous when I sat down across from him, started by thanking me for coming, for giving him this chance. Then launched into what sounded like a rehearsed speech about how that night at the party was the biggest mistake of his life, how he thought about it constantly for years, how seeing me at Northwestern made him realize he'd never forgiven himself for what he did. I listened without interrupting, watching him perform remorse. When he finished, I asked him a simple question. Did you think about how I felt that night, when you kissed me as a joke and your friends recorded it? He hesitated, then said he hadn't really considered it at the time. Said he was caught up in impressing his friends and didn't think about the consequences. I told him that was honest at least. Then I explained that I'd spent years building a life where that moment didn't define me anymore, where I was confident and happy and surrounded by people who valued me. That I'd forgiven him not because he deserved it, but because holding on to anger wasn't serving me. His face lit up, like forgiveness meant I was giving him another chance. I clarified before he could get too hopeful. Forgiveness didn't mean I wanted him in my life. It just meant I wasn't carrying what he did anymore. I was with someone who'd never made me question my worth, and I wasn't interested in bringing someone into my life who reminded me of the worst version of myself. Marcus asked if there was anything he could do to prove he'd changed, to show me he was different from that 17-year-old who thought cruelty was funny. I told him the problem wasn't about proving anything. It was that I simply didn't want to. That I'd built something good and stable and I was protecting it. He looked devastated, asked if I was saying there was no chance, ever. I thought about my answer carefully. Told him I was saying I was happy with my life exactly as it was, and that should be enough. We parted ways outside the coffee shop. He tried to hug me and I offered a handshake instead. Watched him walk away and felt absolutely nothing, no satisfaction, no residual anger, just complete neutrality. The rest of spring semester, Marcus kept his distance. I'd see him occasionally around campus, usually alone or with people I didn't recognize. He'd nod politely if we made eye contact but didn't approach or text anymore. David asked one night if I'd noticed Marcus had backed off. I said I had and I was grateful for it. David pulled me close and told me he was proud of how I'd handled everything, that it took real strength to set boundaries and stick to them. Maya visited in April and I told her about the conversation with Marcus. She asked if I felt like I got closure and I realized I hadn't needed closure from him. I'd gotten it from myself, from building a life I was proud of, from knowing my worth without needing him to validate it. Senior year approached and David and I found an apartment together near campus. Marcus graduated that spring. I saw him at the ceremony from a distance, but we didn't interact. I heard he'd gotten a job in Boston and was moving back east. When I walked across the stage at my own graduation a year later, I thought about the girl I'd been at 17. How she thought Marcus Chen was everything she wanted, how his approval felt like the most important thing in the world. I wished I could tell her that the revenge she'd fantasize about in her darkest moments wasn't about making him suffer or proving him wrong. It was simpler than that. Just becoming someone who didn't need his approval, whose happiness wasn't contingent on whether he realized what he'd lost. Someone who could see him and feel nothing, not hatred, not triumph, just the pleasant indifference you'd feel toward any stranger who once briefly intersected with your life. David was waiting for me after the ceremony with flowers and my parents and Priya. We took pictures and made dinner plans and celebrated the future we were building together. Marcus Chen had become what he should have been all along, irrelevant. The best revenge is living well, people say. But I learned it's more than that. It's living so well, becoming so secure in your own worth, that the person who hurt you becomes background noise. Not even important enough to hate. Just someone who existed in your past, who taught you what you wouldn't accept, who made you stronger by making you learn to value yourself. I never gave Marcus a second chance. And in choosing myself, in protecting the life I'd built, in refusing to compromise my peace for his redemption, I won. Not in a way he'd ever understand, maybe not in a way he'd even notice. But in the way that mattered most, I won myself back. And I kept her safe. That was enough. That was everything. Subscribe for more stories like this.